Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, joined by Colin Watt today for the half-time analysis of the match day live at St Johnstone versus Celtic. Colin, what an uninspiring display that was in the first half. Talk to me about your thoughts.
It's very much like I described it before the game. This is going to be a really tricky tie for Celtic today. It's been, as you said, uninspiring. There's not been a lot to get excited about. A lot of the players, the link-up just isn't there. It's so slow going forward. We seem to take forever to get through the phases. There's never been a kind of a change where we just kind of break, and we break at speed. There's no pace in that team. Probably the best kind of bit of play was a bit of link-up between Rogic and Turnbull, and then played it through Brown. It was kind of way past Brown, but it just kind of sums up the way they've been playing this season. I'm looking at that team and I'm seeing the sort of three number 10s that a lot of people are saying with Rogic, Turnbull and Christie. Now, there's two options here. You either go with a second striker up front, and if you do that, you've got to bring on someone like Griffiths or Ayeti, someone that can link up the play with Edward, because there was a stat came out after 20 minutes that said that Odsonne Edouard had only had 3 touches of the ball within the first 20 minutes. Now, you've got to get him the supply. He can't score if you don't get him the ball. He links up really well with someone alongside him, so you've got to play someone there. And Christie, Turnbull, Rogic, none of them's doing that there. So you either have to bring on someone like Griffiths or Ayeti, or if you're going to try and look at the width that we've been given, St Johnstone are letting us get the ball wide. Bring on someone like Mikey Johnson. Get him to stretch that defence. Greg Taylor was getting a lot of joy down that left-hand side, getting beyond the last defender, trying to put the ball across. But there was nothing there. So I would say I would make a couple of changes probably. I'd bring on Johnson. I'd bring on Griffiths probably, of the 3 strikers that's on the bench. That surface is really bobbly, and he'll take a shot from range. It could be the one that bounces over the goalkeeper. But this formation we're playing is not working. It's not working at all.
You opened up there by saying that, and you quite rightly did say before the game this was going to be a tricky tie. Yes, it is, but I'm asking myself, why is it? Is it because of the quality of the opposition? No, I don't think so. Is it because of the way that they're actually playing in terms of the St Johnstone game plan? And I don't think that's what's making it tricky either, Colin. And although I can see that the pitch is pretty heavy, and you can see that when the ball's getting sprayed across the back, that it's kind of holding up. It's a boggy ground, isn't it, McDermott Park? I don't even think that's the reason why this has been a tricky performance. The reason it's been tricky is because we've been so poor. I mean, I'm looking through that team, and I'm going to have to say it, right? And it's not because he's made a howling error, which he has done many, many times. And it's not because it's, let's pick on Shane Duffy, he's an easy target. I'm looking at Shane Duffy, I'm looking at his shape, and I'm talking about physically, not the shape in the defence. The way that he gets the ball and the speed in which he then tries to pass it, it's so languid, it's poor. From back to front, we're slow, there's no tempo. And Shane Duffy, there was a moment where he went on a run. He went on a run, and you're thinking, well, this isn't going to be an Ayer-esque run. He's galloping up the park, 9 minutes in, right? 9 minutes in, he loses the ball. Now, it's the second time I've seen him doing this. But instead of doing what you would expect from the likes of Ryan Christie, for example, because as much as he is criticised, he is tenacious, Colin. If he loses the ball, he's the first to win it back, right? Yep. Duffy saunters back to his own half, and I mean saunters back. The body language, he still looks heavy, February in a season. Now, regardless of COVID, regardless of all of that, there's still facilities for professional footballers to get themselves fit, to get rid of excess weight. He's no fit. I mean, 6 minutes in, there's a corner kick. By the way, I think we've had 7 and nothing's came of any of them. But we've had a corner kick, and he's blowing heavily, standing in the box, sweating buckets. And I look at that and think, that's simply not good enough. And now you can say anything you want about everything that's happened this season, not only to Celtic but to Shane Duffy. The prerequisite should be that you're fit and you're actually ready to step in, because even his body language isn't good enough, Colin. There was a moment where Scott Brown, I wouldn't quite call it a suicide pass, one of the ones, but he didn't have much time on the ball. But because he's already set himself up to play at such a low pace, he almost injures himself. You remember it down in the bottom right. And the first thing he does is he looks at Scott Brown to blame Scott Brown. How about actually getting the ball, getting it under control and passing it quickly? Because he's so slow, Colin. And, this season, of all the things that have gone wrong, I'm sitting here in February thinking, at least show us that professional pride. That an international captain should have, no matter who he's playing for, but he's playing for his so-called boyhood idols, shows that professional pride, and he can't show it because he's slow, and his body language has been dreadful all the way through that first half. And by the way, I qualified that at the beginning by saying this isn't a cheap shot at Duffy. I just don't find that acceptable in a Celtic jersey.
The thing you've got here with Shane Duffy is all you're asking him to do is the basics. You just want to stop the ball from getting in the back of your own net. You want him just to play the ball to the people that can actually play football. His job's to stop the ball getting in the back of the net. There's no need for him to go on these 40, 50-yard runs, especially when he knows he's not capable of doing it. It's as if he's trying to be better than what he actually is. All you want him to do is to stop the ball from getting in the back of the net. St Johnstone haven't had a lot of opportunities in the first half. I think Bain's first touch of the ball was roughly in about the 38th, 39th minute when he came out to collect a cross. That's been as much as St Johnstone have offered so far. Just give the ball to Kenny, give the ball out to Taylor, let them take the ball forward and just stay in your position. If you keep a clean sheet today, nobody will be that disappointed in your performance. But if you go on these 40, 50-yard runs, give the ball away and then leave the gap at the back and someone's got to cover you, that's when people start talking about you. Just get yourself settled in. Just play in your position.
They're actually re-showing. They're re-showing that momentous effort by Duffy. I just don't find it acceptable at this stage of the season. And I think, the person that mopped that up was Scott Brown. And to be fair to Brown, I think, having actually spoken at the top of the show today, Colin, about Sorrow not being included, I think Brown's played particularly well where he has been. The big issue has been, and Eugene Ritchie must be one of my favourites because he's one of the comments coming up at half time today. They've flooded the midfield and so have we. Get a striker on, get in behind them. That's exactly what Colin Watt said at the beginning of the broadcast. Ghosty67 comes in from YouTube to say, for God's sake, put another striker on. Playing with 3 number 10s just looks ridiculous. They are in each other's way. Absolutely, it's pretty clear to see that the whole shape of that top third of our pitch is not working, Colin, and we need to make that change. We know that Neil Lennon doesn't like making changes at half time. Do you think he will?
I can't see a scenario where he lets it go on for that long. I mean, it sounds daft to say it. He's been criticised for the amount of time it takes him to make substitutions, but surely he can't. It's clear it's not working. There's not one person came through here on the comment section or on social media that said, this is really working for us today. We just need to give it a bit of time and it'll click. Because everybody knows it's wrong. He must know it's wrong. The players know it's wrong. Someone's got to take the stand and say, look, this is what needs to happen and stuff needs to change. For me, I'd be surprised if we don't make a substitution, if not at half time, and fairly early into the second half, and it's got to be to bring on a second striker. This change in formation hasn't worked. I don't know what he was trying to achieve today, but you've got to use the formation that suits the players that you have available, and that formation does not suit the players that we have out on the park.
PKer2602 comes in on Twitter to say McGregor is having his worst season ever and escapes any flack. Callum McGregor hasn't really been pivotal to that first half, and we could say that quite a lot this season, Colin, but he is played time and time again. I think the one time this season that he was dropped that I can recall was against Ross County. We ended up bouncing ourselves out the cup. He is an influential player, we all know that. Has he been playing well below par this season, do you think, Colin?
A lot of what McGregor does is off the ball. When he's on the ball, it's kind of simple stuff, but he makes himself available. You always see the pass and the move. He always makes sure that he's available to receive the pass. I think the difference this season is you're seeing McGregor in a much deeper position. When you think of McGregor, you think of the times where he drives forward, he pings one in from the edge of the box. We've seen it in flashes this season, especially at home to Motherwell, when he drove forward and ended up scoring a fantastic goal. He's not been given that freedom to do so this season. And that's probably where a lot of his criticism comes from. I'd agree he's definitely not been the Callum McGregor that we've come to expect over the last few seasons. But I mean, he's certainly not the only one. I think his levels dropped to the same standard of everybody else that's been playing this season. The only one that I would really kind of give pass marks for that I think's kind of developed a bit as a player this season is Chris Ayer.
Chris Ayer, yeah, absolutely. You know that I think highly of him anyway, Colin, but there's a consistency about Ayer. And one thing that I'm really, sitting here in disbelief about is that, the Duffy's body language, that kind of air of that we're second best, we're not going to win anything. So, but I don't ever get that from Chris Ayer. I always think that he's a winner, and no matter what, he wants to win every ball and win every game. I mean, people might think I'm giving Duffy a hard time. I just think in terms of his performance, his weight, his condition, and the way that he's actually approaching the game is simply not good enough for a Celtic jersey. Brian McLaughlin, teams have all season worked harder than we have. I get this, looking at that first half. We are second to everything, Colin. Says everything about our season. There doesn't seem to be any tempo about the Celtic side. Any momentum that we managed to kind of build up in December was knocked out the sails in January. We then put 3 games together back to back. This would have been the 4th, but again, the momentum seems to have been sucked out of that team. What is it about the Celtic side where the two sides of it are so far from each other? So far removed, you see the side that can go and outplay a team like Lille, a side that can go to the San Siro and perform well for 30, 40 minutes, and then you watch that up at McDermott and it's the other side of the scale.
You take a look at the game from midweek. Now, we scored 3 goals in 3 minutes, and the reason behind that was because we upped the tempo. We knew that St Mirren were starting to tire, and we managed to up the tempo. But we don't seem to have done it very often this season. As I said at the start of this broadcast, we're just so slow. We're going through the phases. Everything seems as if it has to go through 2 or 3 different players before it gets to its intended target. There's never that kind of through ball that splits a defence. There's never a kind of run down the wing with a ball put over. There's always 3 or 4 passes. And it's really slow. And to be honest, it's really boring to watch. And that's the reason why a lot of these teams will hit us on the counter. You've seen the ball over the top to Kane. You've seen McCann trying to drive through in the first half as well. We're just slow. It's as if we're stuck in first gear and can't get out. And you can see what we are capable of. That 3-4 minute spell at New St Mirren Park through the week shows you what the team can do, but we're just not doing it enough.
No, you're right. And I'm going to bring this up from Chris Murphy. Brennan Rodgers got the players tested twice a month to check the body fat to make sure they were following diets and fitness plans. Now, it's not just me having a pot shot for the sake of it. It's been an issue all season. The man who's on the screen at the moment, Lee Griffiths, wasn't fit enough to go on our pre-season trip to France. He then wasn't fit enough to play for several months. So it's not as though we are saying this just for the sake of it to have a shot at Shane Duffy. There's players out there who do not look sharp enough, Colin. And I think that, again, it's one of these issues that have actually haunted us all season. There was a absolutely shocking stat at one point in the season where 40% of our goals had been conceded after the 70-minute mark. That comes down to fitness, concentration, conditioning. And when you see these types of stats, it's quite clear that something isn't working there. So, for me, Welsh had come in. He was a first pick alongside Ayer. It's such a shame that he's injured, but we are ready to go into the second half here, Colin Watt, and we'll join you at full time. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on A Celtic State of Mind.